At the con, the bats is going to be broken. Here's your look at McFarlane Toys Batman Knightfall 30th Anniversary Gold Label San Diego Comic-Con 2023 exclusive. Batman has dedicated his life to an endless crusade, a war on all criminals in the name of his murdered parents, who were taken from him when he was just a child. Since that tragic night, he has trained his body and mind to near physical perfection to be a self-made superhero. He's developed an arsenal of technology that would put most armies to shame, and he's assembled teams of his fellow heroes like the Justice League and the Outsiders. In the name of his murdered parents, Bruce Wayne wages eternal war on the criminals of Gotham City. He is vengeance. He is the Knight. He is Batman. Who wants to bet that Bane is first in line to grab himself this bats? This figure is a San Diego Comic-Con 2023 exclusive. And of course, before we get a closer look at the Batman, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did take the time and provide this sample we could have a look at. Grabbing then the tape measure just to see how tall the figure stands. And of course, we will bring in the original Batman, in which this one shares the same mold with. Batman, though, stands about 6.5 inches in height. Yes, he does. Or the figure is going to be about 17 centimeters tall. Of course, that other Batman being the one that we got for the retail release, Knightfall Batman, who shares the exact same mold from one to the other. There's nothing that's been differently done here with this San Diego Comic-Con release of Batman other than cosmetic changes. The suit itself as a whole has been darkened. Not only is the gray a lot darker of a gray, but you can also see as well the cowl, the cape, the boots, the gloves, and all the underoos are all also a darker blue. But the biggest thing that has been changed between the two figures is the fact that the newer Batman, the San Diego Comic-Con release, does have now additional shading both on the front of his mask and, of course, the lower trunks. We're going to talk more about that in a moment. Other figures, of course, we can also then bring in for comparisons. If you're going to be talking about Knightfall Batman, then it would make the most sense, of course, to bring in the big behemoth Bane, who's just barely reaching the camera frame. Here's also what the figure looks like with the Knightfall Catwoman, who I've just now realized is missing her hand. I'm going to have to go and retrieve that. And here's also what the figure looks like with the Gold Label Edition Robin, should that be the way you want to display the figure as well. Let's talk the figure's accessories. First of all, Batman comes included with a display stand. Normally, I would have said this is just a circular black display stand. Normally, I would have also mentioned the fact that it's just the DC logo printed down below. And probably in a case like this, it would be the easiest to probably bring in what I've just finished describing. This is a regular DC Multiverse stand. You can see now how they've jazzed it up for the SDCC 2023 release, adding now the original logo, I believe, for many of the Batman comics during the Knightfall run. The brighter, almost orangey red symbol with the yellow fonted Batman logo on the front of it looks fantastic. And while I am still happy the fact we always get ourselves display stands, not knocking the fact that a company like McFarlane Toys seems to be one of the fewer companies that are still including stands with their figures. Man, oh man, I gotta say, I really like the look of the display stand. I can't even get that all out by the fact that they actually took the time to print something like this on the front of it. Let's move that to the side. If you, though, want to provide some additional jazzing up to Batman, not like he's jazzed up enough, the figure also comes included with this stand that we've seen a couple of times already with Jokerized versions of Batman. I've looked at a couple of here on this channel. Feel free to give those a gander. But I think the DC logo is exactly the same, stand-wise at least. It's hollow, though, on the back. It's a hollow plastic. And then contained inside the top clip here is a removable Knightfall card. This Knightfall card does have Batman with Knightfall 30th Anniversary down below here. I believe this is Batman 497, the Breaking Up the Bat by Bane. Just to bring in the other comparison, this is the original card that we did get from the retail release Knightfall Batman. This is, again, a cover from Knightfall, but this is the more iconic cover of him, of course, breaking the bat across his knee. Flip around to the back, the Knightfall 30th Anniversary does also include a certificate of authenticity, just though to certify that this is a limited edition worldwide product. The Batman Knightfall 30th Anniversary figure is authentic and officially licensed by McFarlane Toys. The figure is created, developed, and designed by Todd McFarlane and his award-winning design group. All figures are individually hand-painted. How about that? Let's put that to the side. Or, of course, yeah, you will want to be putting it back into the... It basically just sits along these grooved pieces of plastic. Just take the card and slide it down. There you go. You got yourself a nice little display piece. That's definitely going to be on display with of course, Batman, the way he looks at least right now. The figure also comes included with some accessories. Now, these aren't necessarily exclusive to the figure, as these were accessories that were already packaged before with the retail release. First of all, Batman gets himself a pair of gripping hands, best suited for then holding the Batarang that we will be looking at in a moment. These hands, just to bring in the original one that we got from Batman before, I just wanted to show you that the coloring of the blue, now I did already swap out one of the hands for the retail release, but I don't know if you can actually see that the blue is a little bit more darker on the SDCC release versus the original one that we got before. Of course, the hands themselves, you do get two gripping hands. The hands themselves are actually quite easy to swap out. Just hold onto the forearm of Batman. Don't break his back in the process. We're just going to wiggle the hand and remove it from the provided post. There we go. And then we're just going to swap it out then with the thumbs, making sure, of course, thumbs go in. Plug that in place. And then the figure's good to be then holding the next thing he comes included with is his Batarang. The Batarang, again, isn't necessarily exclusive to this release, as the Batarang that we did get before from the retail release. Can you again see the difference between the two? The darker, much darker navy blue with the SDC versus the regular lighter blue that we got from the earlier Batman. It looks to be the case that they are exactly the same Batarangs, and they'll hold in his hand the exact same way as well. So let me just take this and clip it in between his thumb and his four fingers. There we go. I kind of wish that the figure could have come included with one other accessory other than just the Batarang that I just dropped. Just because then it would have something that would be exclusive to this figure, something that we haven't yet seen. But again, we're just going to go ahead and take the Batarang and clip it into his hand. It holds okay, providing you've got it far enough in, which I'm realizing right now I don't have it far enough in. Let's go for right now, at least remove that, put that all to the side. You know what, maybe what we'll also do as well is we'll move the standee out of the way as well, because I feel like the camera's going to want to focus in on that when really the camera should be focusing in on what I think the best thing about this figure is the fact that it now has additional shading on the front of his face. To best show how this works, I'm just going to bring in the original Batman so you can see from before. While it was a stellar sculpt, and it still remains to be one of, I feel, the best Batmans we've gotten, how just the improvements cosmetically have now made this Batman a perfect 10. Yes, I'm sure you probably could easily look at this figure and see there's probably some things they could still have done better. But really, to look at the head sculpt and see how well they've shaded it, not only the front of his face, not only the areas of his neck, but the fact that they would also take the time to darken the areas around his ears, a small touch of detail, but man, does the figure look fantastic. The thing I also really like about it not only is the additional shading, but the fact that the blue that they chose is a much darker blue, and I feel fits more perfectly to the way he looks in the comics. The original blue was fine, but I think the darker blue works a lot better, and it certainly works a lot better now with the darker gray that they chose for the rest of his suit. The thing I only really criticized about the original figure was the fact that the gray that they used I thought was way too light. Now darkening that, again, it takes all those very minor criticisms, and again, like my criticisms for this figure were quite small, but then to take only those things that I thought they needed to touch up and fix then those problems, like the darker gray, makes this for me, again, a perfect mold for Batman, and now perfectly painted. The thing about it, though, is now by adding a cell shading, I sort of want to see this approach being done then with other future DC Multiverse figures, because I really like the look of this. It looks like he was taken certainly from the pages of the comic itself. The sculpting of the face and the mouth itself are exactly the same. They haven't done anything differently to that, but again, just like shading alone is really where the improvements of this figure can be very visibly seen. He does have not only the shading on the front of his face, the neck as already mentioned, but he also has it down below in his lower trunks as well. This adds again some much needed color. I don't feel like they necessarily needed to do it everywhere though. They really need to pull back, because if you add too much shading, I feel, to the figure, I think it would take a lot away from it. So he doesn't have it necessarily on his cape. The cape is still the same from before. He doesn't have it on the back of his body either, and nor does he have it on the gloves. Maybe they could have added just a few scribbles, but then again, like how far, like where do you go for this before it becomes too much? I don't think it necessarily needed it on the boots, maybe just a little bit on the gloves themselves, but maybe not to the extreme of what he has here in the trunks nor in the face. I think they have just the right amount of shading without taking too much away from the figure. But again, like the body is exactly the same as the one we already had a look at. So again, like the more tapered off body, which people are really liking about this specific figure, carries over very nicely now with, again, that darker gray and darker blue. Utility belt also seems to be the same. It doesn't look like the yellows are any bit different from one to the other. And again, like the boots, the construction of the figure, and even like right down to the capes are going to be exactly the same. For the articulation on this figure, it's going to be also exactly the same. The head is going to be on a ball joint, so yeah, it does rotate all the way around. The head does look up and still the same way. Also kind of gives you a chance to see the way they've shaded the under neck area. The head does also look down, only to about here, by the way, and the head also tilts back and forth as well. The arms come out easily at 90 degrees, no problems there. You can take those arms and rotate them all the way around. That's the same on both the sides. You can swivel at the bicep. Just be careful. Just be careful you don't prick yourself on the gloves that he has. Double hinges on the elbows, and then the hands rotate, if I can get it, hands rotate also all the way around. Upper torso is on a very good ball joint, and equally can be said as well for the lower ball joint in the abdomen area as well. Legs do split out. Once again, they seem to be on ratcheted joints. You can see inside the cavity of his thigh. You can take those legs and move forward and move them back. The lower trunks are still a softer plastic, but again, you're not going to be getting that, quote, figure diaper, I feel, with this new design of Batman. His body's very tapered here, very narrow in the waist, and then goes seamlessly, I feel, then right into the legs. Speaking of the legs, the figure does have a double hinge on the knee. He doesn't seem to have any articulation once again in his boot. It's just a continuation of his calf. And then his ankles move up and down this way. Not really much in the way of an ankle rocker, but then the figure also has at least toe articulation. I will say, though, getting the figure out of the packaging, I have one loose foot just right here. The other foot seems, though, to be fine. All in all, though, taking again, when we looked at the original Knightfall Batman, and again, I'm just going to slide this one over and bring in the original Knightfall Batman, I had little in the way of complaints for the figure. I really liked the way they sculpted him. The head sculpt was fantastic. I would have only said, though, the coloring of the original Knightfall Batman makes a little more closer to the color scheme of the original Kenner Superpowers Batman. The brighter grays, for example, the brighter blues. They have now since darkened that for the SDCC 2023 exclusive release. And boy, oh boy, even just those cosmetic changes alone, how we get a very vastly different looking Batman. If you get the chance and you're able to make it out to the San Diego Comic-Con booth, I guess it's now wrapping up. It's already wrapped up. But if you get the chance to try to track one down for yourself, I definitely would say get this one. The only downside, though, is now that we've got something like this for a Batman with this shading on the front of his face, I would really like to see them do that with maybe future releases. Maybe what they could always do is keep the bodies of the original retail releases intact, and then release maybe gold label edition comic themed figures that have, again, like all the additional cell shading, all the shading on the front of the mask that I mentioned in this review. While maybe in the other final looks, I had Knightfall Batman being broken across Bane's knee. I wasn't going to do it this time around simply because I already covered off that territory. And I also feel as well, this is too good of a Batman to be broken across Bane's knee. What I will do, though, instead is how the figure's displayed right now with the new custom-made display stand with the Knightfall Batman logo. And of course, that DC podium stand behind him depicting Batman 497. This is exactly the way I'm going to be displaying the figure on the shelf. You know, again, like the only minor criticisms I really had to make about the retail release Knightfall Batman was the fact that the colors that they used for him was a little too bright for my liking. Darker of a blue was definitely necessary, and I definitely think as well, like the gray that they used for the suit looked more reminiscent, I felt, of the Kenner original Batman colors, and not like the way he looked in the comics. By though darkening the gray like they'd done in this case, by darkening also the cape, the cowl, the gloves, the trunks, and of course the lower boots, all in that darker navy blue. And then on top of that, if that wasn't already enough, that they also added the additional shading on the front of his face, the neck, and then in his trunks. This has now taken what I already liked so much about the original Batman and made him almost perfect. I guess no figure can really be truly perfect. There's always something that they could always have done differently to it, but this guy comes pretty close for me. Now using also as well the more tapered off Batman body, a little more leaner, a little more slimmer, works quite well for the color scheme that they went with here. I didn't really touch too much about the idea, can't even get that all out, the idea that the Bat logo is raised on the front of his chest. That is something also that, of course, carries over from the original retail Knightfall Batman, but all in all, head to toe, this is a fantastic looking Batman. The thing about it, though, is where do we draw the line? Now that we've gotten ourselves a shaded Batman, which again, right away, Batman is a good pick to have a character that's shaded, because half the time in the comics, his cowl always has something shadowed across the front of it. But wouldn't you love to see this also being approached with other future Batman figures? It doesn't have to necessarily be brand new Batman figures, but why not maybe go back to some of the earlier figures that they've done before and not simply just release them again as gold label editions with the additional comic-centric shading in front of it? What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. Have you had the chance as well to pick up the Knightfall Batman SDCC 2023 release? If you have, let me know down below in the comment section. If you haven't yet had the chance to find this guy, is this a figure you could see yourselves picking up and adding it to your collection? Weigh in your thoughts down below in the comment section. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample of the brand new Batman 30th anniversary. I can't even believe it's been that long since Batman got his back broken. But 30 years ago, that ended up happening by the likes, of course, of the big behemoth Bane. But again, they were nice enough to provide the sample of the 30th anniversary Knightfall Batman SDCC 2023 exclusive that we had the chance to have a look at in this review. Speaking of reviews, if you enjoyed the one that you just finished watching, why not hit it with a like? If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and certainly do want to stick around for more, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and as well turn on the bell notification. If you're also interested, we will be looking at some more McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse reviews coming your way. In fact, probably even this week. So if that's the kind of thing you like to come back to this channel for, please and thank you, come back to this channel. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.